Many of the Black Lives Matter protests that make news happen in big cities. That's where much of the conversation about police reform is centered as well. But our nation's summer of racial reckoning is also playing out in smaller communities, including the city of Medford. As Stephanie Leydon reports, one group advocating for police reform in that community has found an unlikely ally.
So this is your handiwork? This is my handiwork.
During another hot summer, Crystal Chandler painted this electrical box, turning it into a neighborhood landmark.
My baby.
She got her start as a community activist growing up here in West Medford. In the wake of George Floyd's death, Chandler organized a rally against racism and called it Mobilize Medford. The name stuck. Mobilize Medford's now a group with 1,000 Facebook followers and, says Chandler, a mission to hold police accountable.
We have stories for days about Medford and policing and racist neighbors and, and not being able to get our stories on the record, not being able to file complaints against police officers. Like, that's the issue right now.
But there's another issue. Another group of Medford residents see as the real problem, police being unfairly targeted.
We thank and appreciate all of you here tonight.
Kelly Catallo, a local realtor, helped organize this police appreciation rally.
I think a lot of people in the community wanted to come together to lift the spirits of our police officers. They are feeling demoralized, and they're good people. They're very good people.
They worked, as one longtime police officer told me, nonstop during the COVID shutdowns, and like all first responders, were hailed as heroes. And then George Floyd was killed, and, said the officer, it was like the lights went out. In many ways, Medford's a microcosm of the country, divided along familiar cultural and political fault lines. But in this community, the push to reform police appears to be gaining momentum.
No time in history have you had so many police officers asking to work together with the community for change.
That's the police chief, Jack Buckley, speaking at a city council hearing about the impact of George Floyd's death. Mobilize Medford sent him a list of demands. He responded with a letter, 13 pages long.
When I read his letter, I read it multiple times, I just broke down crying at some points, to be honest.
Because, she says, the police chief acknowledged something groups like hers have been saying for years. Racism is part of the history of policing. The police chief wrote, quote, "It cannot be denied that our profession was grown out of an oppressive and violent practice of targeted enforcement against people of color."
It just made me think that for once, maybe once, this community that I love, this community that I grew up in, that my family's been here for generations, that it can actually be fair and equitable and just for everyone.
It's not just attitudes about policing that are evolving here. This summer, Medford School Committee voted to change the name of the Columbus School. Politics are creating division in a city that used to be united, says lifelong resident Marie Cougneau.
Unfortunately, because of the circumstances in the world right now, it seems like people have forgotten who our city and what our city is about. And our city is about diversity, and we were very proud of that.
Even as people with diverse opinions clash, as a big national conversation plays out in communities across the country. Stephanie Leydon, WGBH News.
If you'd like to read the Medford Police Chief's letter in which he writes about the history of racism and policing, there is a link on our website and on the Medford Police website.